I want to pick your brain on something. There is a divorce in Zimbabwe that has wreaked havoc in the nation and even in the Christian spaces in Zimbabwe. And this divorce is of Evidence. I'm sure you know Evidence, and his beautiful wife called Anesu. What breaks my heart about this particular divorce is these two were a very power couple, if I should put it correctly. And I know Evidence personally. I know the wife personally. These two, you would think at one point that they're inseparable. They loved each other so much, they actually have children together. But they've reached a stage whereby they are divided. They are divorcing. And not only that, the wife is also coming out, saying the reason why she's coming out of the marriage is because of abuse. And she's laying multiple allegations against Evidence. And on the flip side, Evidence is more, of a guy who's trying to assume responsibility and saying that the boy child needs to be heard too. And he feels like he's not being heard in as far as social media narratives are concerned. But I'm coming from a different angle and looking at the cult that this couple belongs to. Because I'm not really concerned about them divorcing. Many people divorce. If their divorce is based on merit, then it can be justified. But I'm looking at the cult they belong to, the cult of Emmanuel Makandiwa. We can go back into history. The cult of UFIC is known particularly for causing divorces. It is known particularly for separating couples. That's how the entire cult is sustained. It's more like divorce, it's a currency, it's a spiritual currency for the entire cult at large. People in Zim, they don't really look beyond. They just deal with surface information and they don't dare to investigate or to critically analyze the depth, the cause, and effect of this divorce. You knowing these parties and you knowing Makandiwa as well and UFIC and its history, how would you critically analyze what's going on right now?
We need to look at this from maybe, if you allow me to look at it from a psychological perspective. We can then fill in the spiritual blanks here and there, but we need to understand the psychology, the psychological pieces that are playing here and what it means from that psychological perspective. Firstly, we have Evidence who is I don't know what Evidence calls him. Does he call himself a prophet or something? Assuming he's calling himself a prophet. So he's a public figure of sorts in that sphere, in that public sphere, in that circle. So is the wife. So the two that are somewhat public figures are coming out onto social media to air whatever issues that are going on between them. So from that point, we see that the public trauma, exposure, and narrative war. So there's a public trauma that they're displaying, and then there's this narrative war that they're giving. One is giving her story, the lady, and the man, Evidence, is also giving his story. So there's the narrative war that is going on there. So from a psychological perspective, we have the two that are both claiming to be victims. So we have that mutual victim identity lock, which is going on there. So who is the true victim? Evidence is saying the boy child needs to be heard. So he's also playing victim. The wife is playing victim. The truth of the matter is that they both could be victims here. In that there's this competing victimhood that we see from the two. And I'm talking here purely from a psychological point of view. Then that means that we have two competing victims. So if there are two competing victims, who is the one making these two victims? Somebody else. Because if they're all crying that this has happened to me, this has happened to me, somebody else might be pulling the sticks and controlling the issue here. So the shadow of domestic violence and allegations. This is what the wife is now trying to bring up. So we then get what they call in psychology the trauma bonding. But here's where my key thing is, where I'm trying to get at. The most powerful psychological force here is spiritual authority trauma. So there's what we call spiritual authority trauma. This is where the two, Evidence and his wife, are and were divided by a spiritual father, so to speak. Yet neither of them can confront him and assign blame to him. You gotta understand this. They are both playing victim, because Evidence is going to blame the wife is going to blame Evidence, but none of the two can blame the person that they view as an authority. That might actually be the cause of their problem. And
Okay,
there's
just hold
reasons.
up there. Just hold, before you proceed. Why would you think that there is spiritual authority trauma? Why would you think that Makandiwa could be the one causing this rift?
Because he could be the one to fix it, but he has not chosen to fix it.
Exactly. You know, what you have said now is one of the things that I was looking at. Both Evidence and what's the name? And Anesu, they all respect Makandiwa. They will do anything for Makandiwa. Evidence will do anything for Makandiwa.
Then-
The wife would do the same.
Yeah. So
And Makandiwa has the power to revive this marriage.
So from what's happening here, we're having, like I said, competing victimhood. They are competing to be the victim. Evidence is now playing the card that the boy child needs to be heard too. So you can tell from a psychological point that there's this dynamic there that we're calling, that I've just said, the spiritual authority trauma. And then there's a dynamic within that is also called the spiritual authority capture. And this happens when a religious leader becomes a psychological parent. So that one is already established. Not only is this a psychological parent, but they are calling him a spiritual parent. So that's where this spiritual authority capture then cements itself. Now, this becomes complicated in that, as you are saying, Anesu cannot criticize or speak anything bad about Makandiwa. Neither can Evidence. But what if, let's just go with the what if and not put it as a solid. What if Makandiwa is the one that has caused the problem to begin with? But these people are so captured by this spiritual authority to a point that they cannot critique or criticize or even think or assign blame for the crisis or the troubles that they are facing. So in other words, then, the authority, which is Makandiwa in this case, is above criticism to both parties, to both Evidence and Anesu. They cannot, because disagreeing with Makandiwa or even criticizing Makandiwa can be looked at, it feels like sin to even think. It's almost akin to saying you've betrayed God. So this is where these people find themselves in. So this couple cannot fight the true source of their conflict. So if their true source of their conflict is Makandiwa himself, then they are doomed, because they cannot actually confront that. They cannot confront Makandiwa and say, you caused this rift in our marriage. So this is not only for these two, but it is, like you were saying there's a lot of this that goes on in that particular church. I'm not very well conversant about what happens within, but I am talking here purely from a psychological point of view. So this then, when you then see Evidence going after the wife, or the wife going after Anesu going after Evidence, and again in psychology, this is where we then come up with the displaced aggression. So instead of us going to confront the real cause of the problem, we cannot, because of all these things that I've mentioned before, the spiritual authority capture, and then we also spoke about the spiritual authority trauma. So all that, they can't really go after the person that is causing the rift. So it could have been, and I'm saying, assuming that it was Makandiwa that perhaps started liking Anesu, and maybe Evidence cannot really say, oh, you're doing this with this. There's something there that it's possible that this could be the guy at the center of the problem is also the one that they both look up to. And so they can't really point a
Let me
finger at.
hold you up again there. Are you saying that, okay, that scenario might be legit? Are you saying that there might have been a case of Makandiwa himself developing interest in Evidence's wife?
I am not expressly saying that. I am giving it as a scenario that we have a situation here where, because of someone, the one person that is supposed to be at the center of this, there is this displaced aggression. From what they are displaying, I've looked at the posts. I've followed this. I've looked at the posts that Evidence was putting up. I've looked at the posts that Anesu was posting on social media. The fact that they've taken this to the public, again, in psychology, I pointed out the public trauma exposure and the narrative war. Why have they chosen to go public and fight in that way on social media?
Do you think, is there a chance, of course, they must have done this before, going to Makandiwa and get Makandiwa involved and try to fix what was done? Do you think Makandiwa is deliberately ignoring this matter so that we can help them apart?
This is why I allude to this, that he could be the cause of the problem.
Why?
Because if he wasn't, they would go to him. But then imagine if it is that it's him, then there is, again, that displaced aggression, that instead of me confronting the issue, I am now hit with this cognitive dissonance, that I can't really blame the person that I say is the deputy to Jesus. I can't say he's the one that's the problem. So we have that issue again, that a person like Evidence, with all that we know of him and how much he invested in the person of Makandiwa as a spiritual leader and a person that hears from God, how can he then say this man has done this or this man has done that? Even for him, even if you was to catch him red-handed, because of that cognitive dissonance, he wouldn't be able to come out and say this man did this, because he would feel as if he's betraying God. So this is how deep, from a psychological point of view, that this goes, and how captured most of these people that are in these places that
but then let me bring this to your attention. In the case of Evidence, I don't think I know for a fact Evidence does not look at Makandiwa as a holy man of God. He sees Makandiwa as a mafia. That's what I believe. Why do I believe that? Because of the things that Makandiwa made him do. And there is no holy man of God who could have made Evidence. Do you know the things that Evidence has done for Makandiwa? Evidence has gotten them dirty for Makandiwa.
Exactly the point. The fact that he could go to that length to do that sort of thing for him means that he truly has been captured in this spiritual authority capture, that he actually thinks he is doing this on behalf of a person that is connected to God. It's deep. The psychological thing here is deep, because if he can do anything and everything, that means he's even deeper than you are assuming. So when we talk of these people getting trapped into this thing, and they're so deep into this that they actually believe this man, when this man says he spoke to God and he's a God, he's the young brother to Jesus, they believe it. This is why they are willing to do anything and everything. If it's mafia, you can always walk away from it, man. But if it's spiritual, that's a different thing. The way that you're taught never to attack something that is spiritual. So they instead of fighting what is the problem, they'll fight each other. Because there's that fear-based spiritual conditioning. So there's fear-based spiritual conditioning that comes in the very simple lines that we hear: touch not the anointed, don't question the leadership, questioning the leadership brings curses, disobedience blocks blessings. So all these things, they might sound like very small lines, but to those that have been captured and those that have been caught up in this, because it's a psychological thing that people don't see the psychology behind it. They only think it's a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual connection that they have. But these people are conditioned. And that conditioning itself is a psychological act. Now, I was talking about the cognitive dissonance part, because a lot of people might think, okay, so what does that mean? What are you talking about? Now, this simply means these guys cannot admit and can never admit that their spiritual father caused them harm. They must protect that, not because they of him, but because of themselves now, because they have invested in believing that this man is a man of God. So to try and disconnect from that causes so much emotional turmoil, psychological turmoil within the people that are attached to these churches. This is why it's very difficult for people to just walk away from some of these churches, because 5 years of you believing that this man is God sent, and then you just decide, I'm just going to walk away from this. There's a bonding that has happened there. There's a connection that has happened there. So this is where we talk about, for those that are listening that want to know more, read up on what cognitive dissonance is, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. So they were made to trust that this is a man given to me by God, sent to me directly by God. Now, how do I then just say, oh, this was a mistake, without it affecting the way I think going forward? So there's that part there. Otherwise, all the suffering that I went through was not holy. All the sacrifices that I have made were not spiritual. All these things, all these fasts that they made you do, these are little bits of things that add up and make it very difficult for you to disconnect. So that's when we bring in that cognitive dissonance. And then there's that spiritual trauma bond that comes, because this is when you think that whatever you are doing, it's because for the love of God. This is loyalty to leadership. This is all the personal suffering you're doing is earning you a ticket to heaven. So there's all these things that you have become emotionally entangled with all this. You can't separate from this anymore. So now what happens to both of these guys? We are seeing what is happening to both of these. They are fighting each other instead of saying, what is the actual problem? So if we were to ask, so this whole thing that is going on, what is evidence saying about Anesu, and what is Anesu saying about evidence? Where is the wrong here? Who wronged who? What actually is causing the tension? If they can't speak and point that this one was unfaithful, or this one lied about this or that, and this is why we are now divorcing, is it an irreconcilable difference that has come up here? What is it? Can they point it out and say it's because of this? They probably can, but they won't, because if it is that it's the bigger guy, the spiritual father, then they both can't point the finger there. They would rather say, evidence will take it out on Anesu, Anesu will take it out on evidence, but none will say, hey, let's team up here. This is the guy that's causing us all the stress.
Okay, but have you ever thought about how does this divorce benefit Makandiwa?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to benefit him.
It has to. If it was not going to benefit him, he was going to stop it.
No, but that's what I'm saying. When we say benefit, I mean,
slow down and think about it. Mm-hmm. What would this divorce benefit Makandiwa? Because evidence was Makandiwa's right hand man. When you talk about you having your fixer, when people talk about I have my fixer,
this is where I'm saying that is it because he already has the control that he needs, because he's got the control on both of them that he needs. He had the control prior to them getting divorced. He maintains that control. So, except if he is now saying, I just want to have this as an independent side dish without any disturbance. But I fail to see, materially speaking, how it benefits him. Except if it benefits him as in, I can do this. If it's just an ego thing for him, that because I can.
Not an ego. Now let me let you in on this other theory. Like I told you, I'd let you in on this so that maybe you can try to balance it. I told you Evidence was Makandiwa's fixer. He's the one who would handle Makandiwa's dirty stuff.
Yes.
And he knew that Evidence at some point was getting discontent. He was no longer being taken care of the way that he used to be taken care of by Makandiwa. Makandiwa kinda neglected Evidence and his family. And he did so to punish Evidence because of some stuff that he had done. You understand? And he had an instinct that this young man, with what he knows, he can come out one day and come for me. And if Evidence comes out today against Makandiwa, I can promise you one thing. If Evidence decides that today I want the world to know what I've done for Makandiwa, that will be the end of Makandiwa. I can tell you this with no iota of doubt. Now let me move forward so that you get the bigger
wait, because I don't want you to pile these bricks too much so that we don't see what's behind them before you get too high with this wall. Here's how I'm going to dismantle what you've just said, because it doesn't make any sense to me that if say, for example, Evidence was this sword that Makandiwa was using, and all of a sudden he chucks this sword out, that sword can be picked by somebody else and be used against Makandiwa. So it won't benefit Makandiwa to chuck this sword out of his camp. But this is what I'm saying, that it's a matter of saying he still has control over this. He's just playing God and saying he can do it. He's not throwing these people out. He's just controlling them in a way that...
Now get me now. He is not throwing them out. He is throwing him out. Don't bundle them. When Makandiwa divides people, he takes one and he throws one away. The threat here is not Anesu. Anesu is the asset. Even now, Evidence is the liability. So dismantling this thing,
it doesn't make sense.
Wait, let me land. Dismantling this unity, because to some extent, Anesu knows more, again, of what Evidence was doing. By dismantling this union, the liability is Evidence, and the asset to Makandiwa now is the wife. And the wife being away from Evidence, it weakens Evidence.
No, but it doesn't take away what it does. If we go by the argument that you're putting across,
you're not listening. That's the problem. You should listen.
I'm hearing you. I need to make sure that I'm getting you right. If Evidence knows, so the threat here is what, according to what you're saying, the threat would be the information that Evidence holds. Evidence holds that information with or without Anesu. Evidence still has that information. So how does Anesu's presence or absence, does it affect the way that Evidence remembers things, or what? Because if he knows this information and the information is a danger to Makandiwa, why would he then throw him out? Because that's like exactly what I'm saying. Why throw the sword out if this sword can be picked and used against you?
It can't if you have the wife and the family. He can't come after his family, because if Evidence is to come after Makandiwa, the wife will rise.
The wife will rise to do what?
To dismiss everything Evidence will be saying against Makandiwa.
That doesn't
Evidence will not proceed as long as the wife is involved, because the wife is still in the church of Makandiwa. That's why you're not getting it. The wife
I'm
still serves 100% in Makandiwa's church.
Doesn't. You see, let's put it in a political sense.
Let me talk about you.
Right.
There's someone who you probably work with, and he separates you with your wife and your children, and that person remains aligned to your wife. Regardless of what you've done with this person, even if you want to come out and release whatever information you have against this person, remember the wife has so much debt on you as well. She knows you in and out. You will come after the man or the institution your wife belongs to, for the sake of preserving the integrity of your wife and your children.
So
that's
now,
the situation with Evidence today.
No, the difference would be this. If you are holding my wife and family at ransom, that's a different case. But if this is not a ransom, it has to
be ransom, it has to be affiliation.
But I can speak. I can still destroy that organization and speak against it because I'm no longer part of it.
At the expense of your children and your wife.
What are they going to do? Is Makandiwa going to kill them?
It's not, but it's
so
just not. Listen, Makandiwa will not respond to Evidence. Remember, don't get me wrong.
It's not about that. It's because what is exposure? When you create a dossier to expose someone, and you have information that can be damaging to an institution or even an individual. You have the power. You have more power.
As long as, get me right, as long as evidence is not with the wife and the children are in Makandiwa's camp, evidence has no power.
Explain that. Explain that one more time. I'm failing to see the logic in what you are saying. If it's not ransom, how does it?
Let me draw you back again. Draw you back again. I told you earlier that evidence loves his wife. He loves his children dearly. He will do anything for his family. I take off my head for him for that. He wouldn't want to see nothing happen to his children and to his wife. He will protect his wife at whatever cost. He will protect his boys at whatever cost. Nothing can ever come between him and his children, just like any other man, any other father, any other mother. Makandiwa started distancing himself from evidence, not from the family. But in him distancing himself from evidence, he was also sabotaging the entire family because evidence is the breadwinner. But he thought twice. I can't dismiss them together. Let me then now create a rift between the two. So that if I am to abandon anyone, it has to be evidence alone, and I retain the wife and the children. He's not going to do it, obviously. He will just be subliminal, operating in the background, making sure they have everything they need. You wash his hands and, play from very, very far much afar. That's how clever and manipulative Makandiwa can be. Now that the wife is away, evidence is alone. With everything evidence is carrying today, do you know the day the wife left, there were people who were sent to go and attack evidence, and evidence was attacked, and his phones, every digital gadget he had, every electronic gadget he had was taken to see what this boy is carrying. Fast forward, now the question you're asking is, how will it benefit Makandiwa to have the wife and the kids on his side and dismiss evidence? By having the wife and the kids on his side, it automatically neutralizes evidence. Because what's important to Makandiwa's side is the credibility of whatever information that will come from evidence. And using the wife on his side will more like neutralize the attempts of evidence attacking Makandiwa.
No, but you see,
that's why today,
I want to draw you. I want to draw you.
There's a campaign that is going already now that evidence is an abuse.
Hang on. I want to draw you away from using these words that AJ was using. Evidence will not attack. There's a difference between attacking and exposing. So if evidence, for example, was to come and speak about what he did, he's not really attacking, he's exposing. If he starts speaking about what he did,
come on.
If he was the one cleaning up,
you will not confess for his redemption. You will confess to attack Makandiwa.
No. But then look at it this way. Let's not always, because I think we use the word attack loosely most of the times.
Okay, listen, if there is a wounded soldier right now, there's only one reason why you come and confess: to attack. You only confess to attack. You will not confess to redeem himself.
He's exposing whatever happened. He's exposing. You see, you are already putting him in a dark spot here. You're already painting him in dark light, because when it's almost like the PR machine is already running here. Are you serious? You're not working with Makandiwa? Because the PR work that is already in place here is such that we're already discrediting this guy. Why label him a wounded soldier? What if he is just saying, guys, this is what I used to do. This is what we did. You see that person there, we did this. We went into that house. We planted these cameras for this reason, for that reason. He's now telling us what he did. I mean, some of these operations, I know some of the operations that were done. So when he's talking about them, it's not an attack. It's just an exposing.
Is the expose not attacking the ministry?
It's not. It's
so
not.
What is it doing?
Huh?
What is it doing?
It's exposing. It's making known that the hidden side is now being exposed to show us this is the operation. Because everyone looks at that man talking about the earth being flat, God, him more gifted than God and all that. And we all are are looking at him from a different perspective, from what they want us to see. The whole side of things that happens behind the scenes and the people that have to be crushed for him to be where he is. We're not seeing that. And all of a sudden someone is saying, I can open the curtain behind so you can see what's behind this guy. That's an exposure of a man. They're exposing him, right? But there are very few that want to step up and do that. So if this guy, I don't even think he's going to do it anyway.
Yeah, he's not.
He's not, because he's so deep into this that he actually, even in his own mind, has convinced himself that Makandiwa is more gifted than God. So he's not going to do that.
That's how clever Makandiwa is. Now you get to see that he'll cripple you. The guy is crippled, the family destroyed, and Makandiwa remains with the upper hand.
Which brings us back to the point that I was making, that he, for his own entertainment and his own egotistical thing, he's patting himself on the back, he's controlling these two people in their separation even. So he's still in charge. He still knows that he can tag this and that one this way, this one that way. He still is very much in control. But at the end of it, with what is it? The two, Anesu and evidence. And I was explaining it again in a psychological sense, that these two, we're seeing what, for me, I was looking at what Anesu has posted, because she hasn't been posting. She just started recently, just posting more. She was silent for a bit. For a while, she was a bit silent. It was evidence that was doing the speaking. Now she's responding, and there's all this tit for tat thing that is going on. So from her silence to start with, and then the indirect speech that she's now come up with, what can we glean, psychologically speaking? What can we glean from this? What do her posts reflect? So we see that long-term, there's that long-term emotional endurance, that she's trying to present herself as somebody that has endured quite a lot. There's also the protective silence that was there before, to say that, you know what, I'm not going to respond to this. I've risen above this. But now all of a sudden, there's the talking. So it also indicates that there's this delayed boundary setting, that now she's setting boundaries. But why was there a delay? What is it? This is also now a psychological game that either Makandiwa is playing or Anesu is playing. So is Anesu really the one behind this whole thing now, or is this a chess game, as you are now saying that one has been put on one side and the other has been put on the other? So there's that emotional thing that is attached to all this. But end of the day, I can tell you this, that the result of all this is that there's learned helplessness, a transition into self-protection. So there's this thing that she probably is thinking, I can't do anything. There's nothing I can do. And for real, the conflict feels unresolvable by the two. If it's just Anesu and what's his name, evidence, they can't resolve whatever it is, that the conflict that's between the two of them, because it is not just the two of them. It's not husband and wife in this. It's a triangle. There's husband, wife, and spiritual father. So the spiritual father still calls the shots. Spiritual father can just say, you know what, you guys are back together, and they'll be back together, just like that.
That's why I'm telling you that it benefits Makandiwa, the entire separation.
He's still calling the cards. So this is a circus, because for me now, having spoken to you again like this, I am now of the view that, what if there's a bigger thing happening? What if this is like a flare? Like in military terms, you have a helicopter or a chopper, you're trying to shoot at it, and then it releases a flare that when you try and shoot, the hit sensors follow the flare as opposed to hitting the plane. So what if something else is bigger is happening within that organization, and we're being given this as a distraction? This is the two people that are working for the same guy, pretending to have all this tiff that they have between them, so that we continue talking about this, but there's something happening behind the scenes. Now my brain is just going, but it is possible, because we've seen this before. We've seen evidence go and come back into this fold. We've seen evidence do all sorts of things, but is this not a distraction? Is our attention not being deliberately drawn into a false war between evidence and his wife? If they are divorcing, why can't they just divorce and say they've divorced? Why the whole continuous, and why bring it to social media? Is this not something that's supposed to draw us away from something else that is going on? Is this not a flare?
No, I don't think it's a flare. And I wish if you can appreciate how much of a liability Chari has become to Makandiwa. Once you appreciate that, you understand why Makandiwa might be the one who engineered this divorce. Just to neutralize Chari, just to neutralize evidence.
But I still think evidence is a tool.
Not anymore.
Well, wait. I am very, very strongly of the view that
a lot of
evidence
things
is
have
a tool.
happened to a point whereby Emmanuel Makandiwa's brothers got involved and they convinced Makandiwa to remove evidence from the picture. You understand? They did all that had to be done to separate Makandiwa and the evidence, and they achieved it. So as we speak, evidence, it can no longer be used by Makandiwa. Makandiwa will never use evidence in anything anymore. So him no longer using evidence and not supporting evidence anymore makes evidence furious. It can make evidence furious and can give him ideas. At any point, evidence would have gone to UBET. At any point.
Okay, let's do it this way. Evidence put out a cry for help. He said the boy child needs to be heard. Evidence, you've got my number. Call me. Evidence, call me. Then we can talk. We'll sort this thing out. Just call me.
You wanna sort this out from how? From him getting back his wife, or from?
No, I need to make him feel that he's safe. If he's got information, we can make him safe.
But
he needs to first detach himself. It doesn't need to feel guilty about it. Doesn't even need to feel this cognitive dissonance thing of confusing him as to, he's not going against God. By even stepping away from Makandiwa, you're not stepping away from God. He should know better, but yeah, contact me. Let's talk, brother.
I don't know why evidence is ignoring the fact that he's dealing with the mafia. Once Makandiwa rules you out, it's done. There's nothing else we can do for Makandiwa. Makandiwa is unforgiving. There's nothing evidence can do for Makandiwa today that will make Makandiwa accept him back. If I was evidence, I'll move on. There's Hubert there who's desperate to also see Makandiwa on his knees. You can just bring these two, tall men and polite them.
You can't jump from the pan into the fire. It literally has to step away from everything.
But at least now he doesn't have a wife, so he mustn't be worried that anything might happen to his wife.
They're not divorced. The divorce has not gone through. It's still his wife.
No, I'm saying you are not getting it. You're slow. I'm saying going to Hubert now is no longer danger because he's going alone. It could have been danger maybe if he was still together with...
These are serious issues. We're laughing. The trouble is, sometimes when you know something, right?
But then on the flip side, before you say that, I think evidence saw this coming. You understand? There's one thing that I always say in life. Karma will always locate you. And karma knows everyone's address. You can't do people dirty to please spiritual fathers and think that the tears of those people will not haunt you one day. Everything that is going through is justified, Everything that is going through, it's the tears of the people that he probably harmed along the way, trying to save his Emmanuel Makandiwa, trying to please Emmanuel Makandiwa. You get? So I'm not saying this from the point of sympathizing. I'm just looking at it as an enlightenment to those who are close to Emmanuel Makandiwa so that they know the kind of strings that Makandiwa can pull when he wants something. Makandiwa would go extra miles to get whatever that he wants and to preserve his so godly image.